Hi, welcome to Stage Perspective. My name is Charles Peters. Our guest today is Rhiannon McAfee. Hello.
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic, all things considered.
Yes, all things considered. That's right. So, you and I have worked together twice, I think. We've
Yes,
we did a show called Curse of the Starving Class years
yes, we
ago,
did.
and that was a fun show
That was
uh,
fun.
and very challenging. And then we did that at 10th Avenue. And then you also just recently did Italian American Reconciliation at Scripps French Theater.
I did. That was
Uh,
my last on stage before everything shut down.
that's right. That's right. And I directed that, and I was in Curse with you. But that's the only time we worked together. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, unless you
Yeah.
count standardized patienting, but not
Oh,
really.
right. Yeah. No, I don't. I don't count that. I could count it,
No,
but I'm
neither
not
do
going to.
I.
No. I mean, sometimes there's very few cases. So I wanted to ask you before we started, what got you into acting? How did you get started?
Oh, so I actually had no interest in acting whatsoever until ninth grade when I was forced to choose an elective, and my options were theater or art. And I didn't consider myself a creative person, and art was definitely not in my wheelhouse. So
Right.
I thought, theater will be easy, and I fell in love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was your first thing that you did that made you feel like, oh, okay, this is it. This is what I want to do.
Uh, it was at the junior high school, and our theater teacher was also the theater teacher at the high school. So she told us little baby ninth graders that we could come audition for the high school play just for extra credit without ever no chance of being cast whatsoever. So I love extra credit in anything. I always do the extra credit. So I went and auditioned. It was the Bad Seed. And I auditioned for Rhoda Penmark, and the drama teacher called my parent that night and asked if I would take the lead.
Oh yeah.
So, so I did Rhoda Penmark and the Bad Seed, and I could not get enough of theater after that.
Wow. Wow. That's a fun show too. That's a good show. I
Oh,
can see you doing that.
being evil is so much fun.
Yep. If you don't know Rhiannon is a petite lady. So probably at that age, you probably really look the part.
I did. Yes, I
Yeah.
was teeny tiny.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. And you pretty much have been doing acting like your whole life. I mean, once you started that, that was pretty much it. I mean, I know you do other things to make money, like we all do,
Yeah.
but you pretty
hmm
much have been acting consistently since ninth grade, right? I mean, you just continue to
I
do
took a
things.
break after college. I took a break and I got a quote grown up job, and got married and had a kid. And then when Rudy was about 2, I started back up again.
What was your grown-up job? Can you tell me?
Uh, yeah, I was actually the campaign manager and grassroots coordinator for Planned Parenthood's public affairs department in
Wow,
San
that's right.
Diego.
And I know that
Yeah,
about
and
you. You're very politically active. I mean, as far as like you're always kind of working in the political arena, which is very admirable. So fighting for
yeah,
causes. So
I do.
yeah,
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 it's
yeah.
also what pays the rent still. So,
That's true. That's true. That's true. And you, what's been like your most satisfying role? Like what was like and you may not be able to answer that. I mean, I don't know that I can, but like what's been like one of your favorite roles that you've ever played?
I think there's a tie for that. Yeah, I think it's a tie. I think Veronica in God of Carnage,
Yeah.
just from a real like gritty character that I really just kind of sunk my teeth into. So from a like challenge perspective, definitely that.
And
But
I
it has
saw
to be
that.
tied.
You've only done that
Did
once,
you?
right?
I've only done that once, yeah.
Yes, I did. I saw you in that production. So, yeah.
And then getting the opportunity to do puffs or 7 increasingly challenging years at a certain school of magic, and it's got a very long
Right.
time, but
Yeah.
that is one of my all-time favorite shows, and I've been in love with it since it came out, and getting the opportunity to actually perform in that is kind of a highlight.
Yeah. That's great. That's great. That one I missed, but I did see God of Carnage. So, Yeah. He actually asked me to help him with it because he was trying to figure out the. If you don't know the show, there's a scene with a
Yes, the pillow.
regurgitation. That's very prominent in the show. But yeah, that's a fun show. So
It is, yeah.
yeah, that's great. Now I wanted to ask you about your parents too, because your parents are very they're well you just say they're British, but they're
I do.
actually Welsh. Are they Welsh?
Yes,
They're actually
they are
from
Welsh.
they are Welsh.
Hmm.
And they're very you the way you've described it, I don't think I've ever met them, and if I have, it's only been in passing. But they're very British and very Welsh, right?
They are. I do admit sometimes I tell people my dad's basically like an adorable British garden gnome.
Yeah. That's like Jen. Jen's dad was about like maybe 5'3" or 5'4", very small, and her mother is as well. Her mother's a small lady, but her dad was very small, and he's also British,
Yeah,
and he lost his accent when he came over because he came over when he was like 10 or 8, on the ocean liner.
yeah,
So
yeah. My
yeah,
parents came over when they were in their 30s, so they
yeah.
still have their accents. And my
Mhm.
father's is particularly. It's not as much as it used to be, but my friends used to hang up when they called my house in high school because they couldn't understand what my dad was saying. He was speaking English, but
Right. Yeah, but Welsh can be very thick. So I know
mhm.
that. I mean, as actors, we study language, so that's, you probably. So how was that an influence for you as far as your tastes growing up? The things that you watch, as far as like when you got into theater, was that something that they were pleased about, or was that something that they were encouraging or not?
Um, it was a mixed bag actually. My mother is a very talented actress. She did a lot of Shakespeare, and she was actually at one point asked to join a Shakespeare company in Great Britain.
I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah, and she had to turn it down, unfortunately. Her family did not have a great deal of respect for the theatrical arts. They had a certain view of what actresses were,
Mm.
um, and did not necessarily think that my mother should be one of those. And she's always wanted to get back into theater, but has never done so. I keep trying to get her to go audition for something,
Oh,
but she won't.
wow. Yeah, she
Yeah,
probably would
my one of
kick
my
butt.
prized possessions is the program from my mother playing Ophelia in
Mhm.
Hamlet, and
Mm.
it's got a picture of her, and she's just so beautiful. So
Uh, that's
yeah,
great.
so
Wow.
my mother was um, very encouraging. My father was a little bit less so, but he's
Yeah.
become more encouraging as time has gone on.
Yeah. And they live here, so they've come to see you and stuff. They've come to see you in
Mhm.
shows and so forth. So that's gratifying.
They
Yeah.
have, yes. Although we sort of have a. My mother asks me if they should come see it or not because they don't like they're very British. I think to this day, only show my parents have seen me in that they actually enjoyed was Blithe Spirit.
Huh.
They
Huh.
they love that one.
It's funny. Is
Yeah,
it the
but they
language or is it the subject matter or
it's a little definitely the language,
yeah.
but
Yeah.
subject matter as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, God of Carnage, you did some rather uh adult things
Yes.
in that show. So
Yes, I
uh
didn't invite them to That's Just Sex either, or
yeah.
It's Just Sex. I didn't invite them to that one.
That's okay. My sister came and saw me in Frankie and Johnny. So, and my
Oh,
brother's in-laws came and saw me. So, and they had like the best seats because in Frankie and Johnny I was stark nude, and
I was going to say they came to see all of you in that.
yep. And so they had sat way over house right, and there's a scene where I just kind of go and I stand behind the bar for a minute in the beginning of the show, and they were right there, and she was like, "I knew we were going to see that, but I didn't realize we were going to see as much of you." So she still talks about it. So it doesn't bother me, but it's just funny. So that's great. And your husband,
Hmm.
you met on a show, which I think is very cool.
We did.
And you
We
have
it was not a showmance though. We did not start dating during that show. It was
oh
several
okay.
years later.
Oh, is that long? I didn't realize it was
Mm.
that long after
Yeah, it was
that
like
you did.
2 or 3 years later.
Yeah. Wow. So you met on it was Pride and Prejudice, right?
It was, and I still call him Mr. Darcy.
Right. Yeah. And he was actually brought in after the fact. I mean, he wasn't originally, was he originally cast?
No, he was not. They actually had trouble finding a Mr. Darcy.
That was it. Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
That's great. That's great. So do you have a dream role? Like a role that uh, like, oh, before I go, I mean, something you want to do before you go.
As ridiculous as it sounds, I already did it. I really wanted to do Puffs. That was my dream role. That was my before I die, I want to be in Puffs.
Right. And if you don't know what we're talking about, Puffs is it's basically like a Harry Potter. It's a musical. Is it musical?
It is not a
It's
musical.
not a musical. It's a play, but it takes place in Hufflepuff,
A
the
certain
school.
school of magic
Right.
and magic.
But it's not licensed or anything, so they really stay away from all of that. But it's about Harry Potter. You're a big Harry Potter fan because I know you went and saw uh, the Cursed Child,
We
which
did in London.
in London, which I didn't even realize that it's so long that you go and see like the first part in the afternoon, and then you
It
take a
was it
break,
was
you
a
go to dinner,
6-hour
and
experience.
then you come back and see the
Yeah.
next part. I'm like,
Yeah.
wow. So yeah,
And it was
that's yeah.
incredible.
I hear it's really something. The special effects, I've seen some of the things from it, so that's great. That's very cool. And you do a lot of your husband and you, and I know this was motivated by him because he's a writer.
Hmm.
I know he just joined the Dramatists Guild
He
recently,
did.
which is a big
He just
deal.
got his card in the mail a couple of days ago, and he did a little dance, and it was highly entertaining.
That's great. And he's a very good writer. I mean, he writes. He's like a real writer. I mean, there's people that say, "Oh, I'm a writer. I write things," but he really writes. I mean, he'll sit and write for hours and hours. I know this about him, and he has started this thing. I guess We've talked a little bit, and I eventually want to have him on, but his influence of those great old like serials, those 1940s, 50s serials on the radio of detectives and so forth. And I know he was heavily influenced. So he started a series called Rex Riveter, right? And
He
tell
did.
me about that.
So it's an audio drama. About each episode is about 40 minutes, and it follows the life of Rex Riveter, Private Eye, your standard kind of gritty noir detective, and his girl Friday, Jenny McIntosh, who I play.
Yep.
And his various cases in sort of 1950s Los Angeles.
That's great.
1955, 1956, and we're about to start our 4th season.
Yep. I was in your first season. Was that in your first or second? I can't remember.
I want to say I think it was our 2nd season.
Yeah, it was right in the beginning of the 2nd season, though. So yeah, it was fun. And he has also written some plays, and he's submitted and been in contests and so forth. And
Yep.
Recently, I know he wrote something for like Write Out Loud for the Twain Fest, and that was presented at Twain Fest, which is a festival about Mark Twain. But you're great as the secretary. Just seeing you is one thing, but hearing you, it's a whole nother quality that you bring to the microphone.
Oh, thank
And
you.
when you do the voiceover, and it's just, you've got that right sort of clip for that kind of character for a set. I mean, casting you for a secretary for a detective in the 50s or 40s is like a no-brainer to me. It's like, well, of course, if I was doing that, I'd be like, well, we got to call Rhiannon. So, but you're doing something else right now too. You recently got cast in another show. What is that?
Yes. Well, I'm actually in several. There's a horror audio drama called Tunnels, and I have been in several seasons of that. And so this is their 3rd season, and I play a very evil character in that because evil is fun.
Hmm.
And then another company is doing a series of different revivals, and I'll be playing several parts in that. But the most exciting thing that I'm doing right now is by Narada Audio Company, and that's called Lola, Queen of the Circus. And I was cast as Lola, so I will be the Queen of the Circus. And I'm recording that in the next few weeks. There's about eight episodes, I believe, in the 1st season. And
now, where can we hear these?
Tunnels, you can actually hear. That's by Haunted Griffin, and that is Haunted Griffin, GRIFFIN.wixsite.com. And then the revival is with Dream Realm Enterprises,
Okay.
and that's dreamrealmsite.com. As for Lola, I don't know yet.
And I mean to cut
I
you
know
off
that
there at
one's.
the end. You were telling me about the show. I'm sorry.
Oh no,
Tell
that's
me
okay.
tell me about the show.
So Lola, Queen of the Circus, follows a story of a young, kind of wealthy socialite whose uncle dies, and she discovers she's inherited a circus, and decides to pose as a circus person
It's funny.
and help them behind the scenes as their sort of wealthy anonymous donor.
That's funny.
So,
That's
and that will actually be on a radio station, I believe, that is doing some audio dramas, but I don't have the information on that yet because we are still in production.
Yeah. Well, share it with me when you do, and
I
hopefully
will.
we can include it, on the YouTube site as a
Yeah.
link. That's great. Do you like doing like voiceover stuff? Do you prefer it? I mean, you probably prefer being on stage, I would imagine, but
Stage
do
is
you?
always my favorite. I
Yeah.
enjoy the voiceover. It's fun and it's a different type of challenge. Part of that challenge being I don't have my scene partner with me.
Right.
Particularly for this one and
Mhm.
some of the ones, like the tunnels. The company is in Georgia, so I
Wow.
record everything and send it to Georgia, so it's
Huh.
just my lines.
Hmm. That's interesting. Yeah, but they
Yeah.
do that a lot. I mean, when they
Hmm.
record, I always wonder that because you always think of everybody standing in one room
I
and
know.
being just like right there, but I'm like, sometimes they're not. Sometimes you're just by yourself, and I'm like, wow, that's, I've done that.
Hmm.
I've gone in and done looping, and that's always it's hard.
It
In
is.
some ways it's harder to me to do that. So yeah,
And then you've got the weird kind of, it's fun, but it's also strange of the, you get stabbed in the show or something, and then you're
right,
like, all right, well, I guess I'm just going to stand in front of this microphone and make a bunch of weird sounds like I'm being stabbed.
right.
So recording the emotes is always just a weird experience.
Do you do you give them takes when you do stuff like that, or do you give them
I
several
do.
different takes? So
Yeah.
that's good. So they can piece it together how they want. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I'll usually, especially for longer scenes, I will typically have Greg read with me
yeah.
off mic and give them one take that's actually me with another person because it
Oh,
sounds different.
yeah,
And then I will give them different takes of all the
yeah.
lines separately.
I remember an old acting exercise that I did on camera that was like that, where I had to play to like that was years and years ago, flirting with somebody like on the other side of the restaurant, and doing it when no one's there, and then he had someone sit down like 10 feet away off camera and do it
Hmm.
night and day. You
It's
know,
so different.
it's night and day. So you have to hold that in your head. It's like, wow, what would I really do? How would I react? So there were a lot of little nuances that don't happen when you don't have a scene partner, or that you
Yeah.
have to manufacture. And I guess with experience, you learn how to manufacture that because, Jodie Foster said, I'm not a good actress, so I just know a lot of tricks to make myself look like a good actress, which I always thought was funny. So, and really it is. I mean, acting is a lot of tricks. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and every medium is so different. I
Yeah.
think I like stage the most because it has an arc and you're doing the whole show every night, as opposed to when you're doing a film or you're doing audio drama and you're just kind of doing a scene here and it's all out of order.
Yeah. Have you done a lot? I mean, I know you've done some film work. You've been trying to break in before all this stuff started?
I'm
You were
doing
going up
some.
to LA and
I was
trying
going
to,
up to LA and
yeah,
auditioning, and I did a couple of short films, and then the COVID hit, and
yeah, yeah.
there's no more.
There's no more. Not right now. People are starting to go back to work. I have a friend that
Yeah.
he posted a thing recently. He was heading back on the NBC lot. And it's like, look at me. So that's
Yeah.
kind of cool. Did you grow up here in San Diego?
We moved here when I was in fourth grade. Before that, we
Okay.
were in Portland, Oregon.
Oh, okay. Okay. So you pretty much have been West Coast most of your life, pretty
Yep.
much. And do you have a favorite theater? I know you've worked a lot of different little theaters. Like you worked the tea house or the tea room, which
I
is up
did.
in
Yeah, we
which you
did
said you
Emma.
really enjoyed, which is up in Encinitas. Is that where it is?
It's actually Escondido.
Escondido. Right. Okay. And it's like a tea room with a little tiny
Yeah,
stage, and you do a
yeah.
show.
They don't even really have a stage. It's just the middle of their tea room.
That's wonderful. right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was definitely fun.
But you've worked a lot of different, theaters and different
Hmm.
arenas and different styles and a lot of different levels. Do you have a favorite place that you like to work?
Um, Gosh, that's a good question. Everyone has their their good sides and their bad sides. I do enjoy working at Scripps Ranch,
Yeah.
um, quite a bit. I
Mhm.
love the way they treat their actors, and I love the people there, and the atmosphere. So that's definitely a
That's
favorite.
not a plug. That was just she's answering honestly.
I am answering honestly. Yeah.
What's the worst thing that you've ever had happen to you on stage? Like, do you have a horror story? A lot of actors have like these horror stories of like either something physically or maybe it didn't even happen directly to you, but it happened like in your scene, you know.
I'm trying to think now. I mean, I've definitely hurt myself on
Have
stage.
you? What's the worst
Yeah.
you've hurt yourself? This
Um, I
sounds
I've
horrible
never
for me to ask you that. Tell me about your pain.
I've never broken myself, but I can think of two things that pop out. I know there was one scene where my foot slipped off the stage on an exit in the dark, and I twisted my ankle really badly.
Hmm.
Um, and then once when I was wearing very high heeled
Hmm.
boots,
Yeah.
and I had to collapse on the stage and
Wow.
managed to like puncture my leg with my high heeled boots as I went down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's nasty. I had a
Oh,
nail go on my foot one time.
oh, wow.
I mean, it's very young. I jumped on stage and I was wearing shoes, and the nail from the shoe came. It's like I could feel my shoe filling with blood on stage.
The
It's
the
awful.
worst I now I remember the worst thing. The time I felt like I was being waterboarded.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
yes, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Mm.
I there this was a version of the show in which there are uh, three Hydes.
Yeah.
Yes, no, four Hydes. There's a middle-aged Hyde, a young Hyde, an old Hyde, and a female Hyde.
Right.
So the Hyde has, and I was the female Hyde, but we also played other characters in the show, and one of the characters was the thrilling dead prostitute. Um, so I was playing the dead prostitute, which involved me, lying on a table dead, and there was a sheet over me, and they covered my head with the sheet, which was fine, except this was over at Onstage Playhouse, where they
Yeah.
don't have a huge backstage. So
Mm.
the gurney was out in the alley before the show, and before one show, it rained.
Um,
So they brought the gurney on. The gurney was wet, and when they pulled that blanket over my head, it just stuck to my face. And for the about 2 minutes that I was on stage with that blanket over my head, I
oh,
was, and I'm already trying not to look like I'm breathing because I'm supposed to be dead, and I thought I was gonna die.
that's the worst. I had to do that in Accomplice, and I was center stage down on a love seat, and there was no. It was so hard, and I was so worn out by the end of the scene because I get electrocuted before that. So
Oh,
my
right,
body is convulsing and jumping around and popping around, and then I'm supposed to be still. And then every night I tried to fall in such a way that like the pillow would be in front of me, partially
right,
in front of me so I could take a little catch breath. And it's just like, dang. But I mean, the plot of the show is that I'm actually not dead, but it's okay if they think about it later. But I'm just like, oh, they're supposed to believe I'm really dead here. It's so
mm-hmm,
frustrating every night. So yeah, that's funny. That's horrible. That's like the worst. It's like that's what they do to like inmates is the wet sheet treatment, to wrap
right.
them, to keep them still. Yikes. Ugh.
I know my scene partner could tell what was happening, and he kept trying to like surreptitiously like pick the blanket up off my
Oh,
face so
no.
I could
Who
breathe a
who
little.
who was that?
It was Steve Murdoch.
Steve. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. Steve's a good guy. He would be aware of things like that. So
Yes.
probably trust him on stage.
Oh,
So
yes, very
yeah,
much so.
yeah. And you've worked with him a lot. You've done a lot of shows where he's directed you. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. What beyond the voiceover stuff? What's next for you? I mean, like,
That's a
2, 3 years. Do you have some goals that you're working on or some things that
I
you're
would like
working on?
I would like to do some more film work. I mean, I want to obviously do a lot more stage work, but my
Yeah.
son is getting a little bit older now, so I have more ability to go up to LA and do more
Oh, okay.
auditioning up in LA. So,
Yeah. How has that been, your trips to LA?
it's good. I don't mind the drive. Um,
Cool.
and I've had some really good experiences in auditions, and I've done some fun films.
That's
So,
good. That's good.
and I've done a little tiny bit of commercial work too, which is a whole different ball game.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. Who are some of your influences? Like, a lot of actors have like, people that they identify with, and oftentimes that doesn't match up with what people see. You know, we see ourselves a certain way. Uh, we try to be honest, but then there's, people go, "Oh, you look like so and so." I'm like, "Thank you. That's insulting." Uh, that happened recently, and I'm like, "Really?" No, but he's a really good actor. I'm like, "Thanks, but he's not really attractive." I mean, uh, anyway, so do you have some influences like actresses, either like you grew up watching or people that you look to now?
And it's weird because I was a huge Audrey Hepburn fan when
Oh yeah,
I was younger, and I'm
yeah.
nothing at all like Audrey Hepburn. But I always admired her and her work. And I also can't sing, so I think I identified with that.
Yeah, yeah,
But I watched a lot of British stuff when I was younger, so a lot of influences, are Dame Maggie Smith and Anthony Hopkins, so and Monty Python.
oh yeah.
So
I grew up
John
watching Monty
John
Python.
Cleese, yeah, yeah.
Oh
I grew up on
yeah.
Monty Python too. So
I grew up in Arlington, Texas, so that's right near Dallas. And Dallas was like the second or third city in the United States to start playing Monty Python, like when
oh
it
wow.
first played here in the United States. So I was watching it. I discovered it for my family. The TV was on, and I went, "What is this?"
What is this magic?
I still remember. I'm
You know,
like, "Oh my God!" And then I was suddenly was like, "You guys got to see this!" And then suddenly we were all stopping to sit and watch that. It came on at 10, so I was able to stay up. I was allowed to stay up an extra 30 minutes to watch Monty Python with the family.
ooh, there you go.
I told
I
that
didn't
to,
realize for a long time that it was actually something you watched. My first experience with Monty Python is my dad had a set of cassette tapes, and
huh.
I listened to Monty Python's Flying Circus on
Oh, how
cassette
wild.
tapes.
How wild.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I was fascinated when I realized it was something you could actually watch. I was like, "Oh, I thought that it was just an audio thing."
Yeah, that's funny. I met Terry Jones and
Oh,
talked
wow.
with him for about an hour. I was working in a shop and I told him that story. He was like, "Thank you for making me feel so old." It's like, "Oh, we could stay up." He was great. This is a long time ago. It was before his all his stuff, and then of course he just
hmm
recently passed. But yeah, Monty Python. What other British shows did you watch?
oh gosh, I can't even remember. We had there were a lot of BBC shows that we
Oh
watched. They
yeah,
were just these kind of quirky, weird
yeah,
comedies.
yeah.
Um,
I'm going to rattle off a list. Butterflies Are Free. Good Neighbors is called
mhm.
The Rising Damp with Leonard Rossiter.
Oh, I didn't watch
The
that one.
Life and Times of Reginald Perrin. Of
Yep,
course, Faulty Towers, Monty
yep,
Python.
yep.
Prime Minister.
The
Yeah,
Vicar
so
of something.
yep.
The Vicar.
With French, friend Saunders. Not
Yep.
Saunders and French was another show.
hmm
The Two Ronnies. All of those, yeah, those all used to run, and I would
Yeah.
they would run like from 9 o'clock to midnight, and they would just
hmm
run them, and like Monty Python would come on at some point. Yeah,
hmm
yeah, that
And
was.
then I think I also was I used to watch Nick at Night,
Mhm.
and I was obsessed with the Dick Van Dyke Show.
Oh, really?
I
Wow.
thought Mary Tyler Moore was an absolute genius, and I still am just crazy in love with Mary Tyler Moore.
She is great in both of her shows and very smart.
hmm
And, in fact, without her, there's so many shows that wouldn't exist. You know,
hmm
she produced a lot of shows, which is great. Yeah, I love the Dick Van Dyke Show. Yeah, there's some great episodes. And
Yeah,
and yeah, definitely anybody interested in comedy should watch the Dick Van Dyke Show. Yeah.
yeah.
So,
And if you
yeah.
if you ever even just get a chance to see Mary Tyler Moore and the inflatable boat scene where
Right.
she opens that box, it's such a great, brilliant example of physical comedy.
Yep.
I don't think there's I don't think there's any lines in that scene for about 3 minutes of her going in and out the door, and then
Uh-huh.
opening the box.
Yep. Yep. My wife is a snoop. My Wife the Snoop is,
Mm-hmm.
I think, the name of the episode. But yeah, no, it's great.
Oh,
Yeah,
it's
you can.
brilliant.
It's all on Hulu now, so you can watch it on Hulu.
Right.
Uh, it's cool. So you talked about Audrey Hepburn as being one of you growing up in British comedies. Is there somebody today that you think of?
I'm such an old lady when it comes to my viewing habits.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know.
that's
Not that
okay.
I
You don't
can,
have to answer
yeah,
that.
not that
No,
I
if you
can
don't
think
know.
of.
I'm the same way. I mean, I don't have it. It tends on what I'm working on at the time and the time of the year sometimes.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll watch, like when I'm working on a character, I'll pick up, I'll go, oh, you know who this is? I've had that
Mm-hmm.
happen in a show where you remember Richard Briers, he did Good Neighbors, and he
Yep.
Ever Decreasing Circles, and a bunch of other shows. He was, on and on and on. I did a show called Absurd Person Singular, and about halfway through the process, I go, oh man, this guy's like Richard Briers. It's just like nothing bothers him. It's a character that Richard Briers would play. And so I started just using that as like as a
Mm-hmm.
motivation, as a spark. And I had a picture of him just like on my mirror, and I was just like, oh, I got to get in that
Nice.
mindset of this hello. And then I found out that he actually played that part later. He had
Oh,
actually
wow.
played the part on British stage. So I was like, oh,
That's
well, that totally
fantastic.
makes sense. So yeah, absolutely. What sort of movies do you like to watch? I always like to know what actors watch and what
Yeah,
they're interested.
I actually I don't I watch more TV shows than movies.
Well,
It's
that's yeah, that movies and TV, whatever you want.
um let's see. Well, right now we're binge watching everything that we never watched before on on Netflix and Hulu.
Right.
Um I just say if you look back at my viewing habits of what my absolute like all-time favorite shows have been
Yeah.
as I was like growing up, my first favorite show ever was Moonlighting.
Gotcha.
As a kid.
Yeah.
After that, my next favorite show was Twin Peaks,
Oh yeah.
which we actually just rewatched, and
That's funny.
we rewatched the whole thing, and I was like, wow, this is terrible.
That's what Jen said. Jen's my wife, and if you don't know, and she's your taste are exactly her. She's like big fan of Moonlighting
Hmm.
and Twin Peaks. She watched it, and she went back and watched it recently. She went, "This is really not. It doesn't hold up at all."
It doesn't, no. And I forced my poor husband. I was like, we'll watch Twin Peaks next, and he's
Right.
like, oh, okay.
Okay.
And we're like 4 episodes in, and I'm like, yeah, this is bad.
Yeah, that's funny.
And
That's
then, of
funny.
course, I was a huge Buffy the Vampire Slayer fan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah, that is still my go-to if I'm sick or don't feel well or I'm in a
right.
bad mood.
Yeah,
I bring out the Buffy and start watching
that's
Buffy.
funny. That's
Yeah,
funny.
my husband got me a Buffy the Vampire Slayer quilt for our anniversary
That's
because
nice.
I'm that much of a nerd.
Yeah, but you're a big Harry Potter fan. I know that too.
I'm a huge
You
Harry Potter
you
fan.
like that kind of stuff. That's not that puts
Hmm.
you in a box or a pigeonhole, but that's something that you like, and I know that about you. So yeah.
Hmm.
And how much writing do you do? Like I know you guys kind of are. You sort of produce Rex Riveter. Going back to
Yeah,
that, do you help him with writing at all, or do you throw out
I don't.
ideas and
I
things?
throw out ideas. I don't help him with writing. I'm his sort of his sanity and his script supervisor.
Hmm.
So we will sit and we will talk over plots, and I will kindly tell him whether or not they're reasonable,
Hmm.
and what the holes are because he's kind of in that place where he knows the characters so well and he has in his brain all of this stuff, but that's never come out on the page.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so it's sometimes things jump and I'm like, you
Yeah.
can't, I know that you know all that information, but the listener doesn't and the listener needs to.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm also there to hold him back of saying, no, you cannot have 15 characters in this show that only have one line because I have to cast that.
Yeah. You can, as your friends come over, and that's the beauty of it. You have people over, and you
Hmm.
kind of do it as you record like all at once. Like you write,
We
write,
do,
write,
yeah.
and then you like do a massive session of like hours of just recording everything, and you do like 10 episodes, and then you like go
Yeah.
back and yeah. Because I came over and they were like, 30 people coming in and out of your house, and the pizza came, and
Yeah, yeah, we'll usually do a case is typically 3 to 4 episodes, and we'll
yeah,
usually record an entire case
right,
over one weekend.
right. It's
And
a party.
Poor Randy who plays Rex will be in our, in our basement for 8 hours,
Yeah,
2 days in a row with no break.
that's funny. I love Randy. He was very sweet because he goes, I don't think I wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for me. He wrote me a long time ago. He's like, I mean, I'm sorry, I'm patting myself on the back here, but I just thought this was really sweet because he is so perfect for that role, and that's why I cast. But I was like, I was doing a thing, Ray's Last Case, which was based on Raymond Chandler and his writings, and I thought, oh, I need somebody to play that role. So, not Raymond Chandler, but was it Sam Spade? Is that his?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and he
Well,
was so right
and
for it.
that was his audition for Rex Riveter, by the way.
That's what I mean. So yeah,
Yeah.
so I mean, he's like, I wouldn't be doing all this Rex Riveter stuff if. So he's like, thank you,
Yeah, no,
and
we
yeah,
were literally we had just Greg had just started writing it,
yeah,
and we were just in the process of starting to think about casting, and we
yeah,
went to go see Ray's Last Case, and we
yep,
were like, hey.
yep,
And I had done a show with Randy, and we knew
hmm.
Randy. Randy and I did God of Carnage together, and we also did oh God, a Christmas Cactus, and It's
You've
Just
done a
Sex. So
bunch of stuff, yeah.
Randy and I excel at being unhappily married on stage. That's our
Right, that's right.
that's
You
our
do,
shtick.
yeah. I get that. I've had one gal I've been married to about 3 times on stage. So yeah, yeah, that's
Yeah.
fun. That's fun. So let me ask you this: what advice would you give to somebody who is starting out, who is like maybe they want to move here? And the thing about being here in San Diego, I was talking about this, is that we have a lot of theater, and I
Hmm.
think that we're a little spoiled because we think, oh, well, everybody has what we have, and really, I've talked to a lot of people
No, they
like
don't.
across the United States, and they don't. There's maybe 2 theaters in town, and we have what, 25? I
Hmm.
mean, now we're talking various levels, but we have a lot of different kinds of theater and a lot of opportunities. Plus,
Hmm.
we're a safe haven, I think, for people to come here because they don't want to immediately move to Los Angeles. So they're like, oh, maybe I'll move to San Diego, and of course, you can come here and do theater. Nobody does theater in LA, unless you're in a big
Hmm.
show. I've done
Right.
theater in LA and it's sad. Um, it's exactly what you think it is. There are a
Yeah.
few theaters that get away with it. But so what would you say to somebody who's either thinking of like moving here, or if you could give advice to yourself 20, 30 years ago, 20 years ago, or however long that is? I'm not trying to pin an age on you. I
Um.
realized I was doing that.
Yeah. I think probably I've mentored a couple of people who were just sort of starting out and getting into their very first shows here in San Diego, and I mean it's less about what you do when you get here, and I mean besides going out and auditioning all the time and getting to know folks, is just be happy to be there, and happy to be here, ready to work. That's always my advice to people, is to there will always be, especially if you are a female here, there will always be 1,000 people going out for the same role as you, and having a good personality and being easy to direct and being friendly, and always just being happy to be here, ready to work, goes a long way, because there's always somebody who's just as good as you
Yeah,
in terms of acting.
yeah, and it's such a gamble because you don't know. It's like, oh, I don't like your hair color. Well, I can change that.
Hmm.
But whatever impression you're giving off at that moment. But I will say that you definitely you're exemplary at that. You exemplify that because you're always a joy to be around in
Yeah, thank you.
rehearsal, and just in general in life. I don't think I've ever. I mean, I know you, like, we all get depressed and we all have our issues and we all have things,
Yeah.
but I always think, when I think of you, I always think of you as being extremely optimistic, and especially in a working environment, you always come in and are like, you're a big hugging person,
Hmm.
this has probably been especially hard on you
It
because
has.
no physical contact
I
except for
know.
except for your household. Uh,
Exactly.
but you're always very loving, very giving, and very like helpful, and I mean, you're a good worker and you're a good actress, and but I mean, you come in and there's an up energy that you bring. So I mean, anybody casting you is like, well, I don't have to worry about any drama with her at all. You're not going to cause any problems. So,
Yeah.
no, that's a great thing to have, and that's good advice.
Yeah.
And especially in this town, it's a very small. I mean, it's a very small town.
Hmm.
You get to know people very quickly, and
Yeah.
people get to know you. So yeah. Is there anything you
Just
would
and
change about San Diego theater?
um that's a good question. I don't know. I think I feel like we're very spoiled here with the amount of opportunities
Yeah, yeah.
and the amount of theaters. I think as with the entire theater world, this doesn't just go for San Diego.
Mm.
There is very little money to be made in theater, and I don't know if there is a solution for that. So, I mean, if you're going to change something about theater, it'd be nice to get paid more.
Yeah.
But that's, you know, you don't do theater because you want to get rich.
No, you don't. And I mean,
Mm-mm.
you can in this town make a semi almost living, but you have to
Hmm.
supplement it with other things.
Yeah,
But you could do that in your field.
yeah,
You could, teach an acting class and then be in a show and then do something here, do something, a lot of different, there are a lot of performing,
yes.
opportunities, not necessarily
There's
just being on stage.
there's a ton of performance-based jobs that you can get to
Yeah.
supplement your income.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's remarkable, yeah, how much theater we really have. So, but yeah, getting paid, that's a good thing. But you don't judge. I mean, I you have work that you have come to you, but you probably choose your projects, right? I mean, you think about, do I really want to do this? Because theater, unlike film, I mean, you can go in and be in a film and shoot in a day, and boom, you're done.
Hmm.
I mean, it's the
No, it's yeah,
director that lives with it for 6, 8 months to a year. You can go in and work for a couple of days and be done. Hopefully, you've done all your homework and stuff. But with stage, no, you know, you're that's at least a 2 month
yeah,
commitment.
yeah. And
Uh,
I will say, when I first started really auditioning for stuff on stage here in San Diego, I auditioned for everything, whether I wanted to do it, whether I knew the director, cared about the. I just auditioned for everything because you kind of have to. Um, but I'm at a point now where I don't audition for anything that I don't really want to do.
yeah, yeah, it's good. Do you have a favorite actress in town?
And that's oh, that is also a good question.
I keep hitting
I
you with these hard questions. I'm sorry.
I know. I will say, and she's no longer in town. She went to LA, but I have absolutely loved everything that I've ever seen Laura Bolan in.
Oh yeah, yeah. Laura Boland's great. Yeah,
And
she's
she
good.
is just an absolute like light of joy and wonder and magic and
Yeah.
sparkly unicornness.
Yeah. I think I worked with her briefly once, and then I saw her in a show, and boy, did she stick out.
Right?
'Cause, I mean, she did, you just go, okay, who's this? So, yeah, she's really good. And what I liked in the show I saw, it was a period piece. And to me, she was like the only one that got it. It
Hmm.
felt like everybody else was on a different page, and she was the only one in that period, she got the tone of it. And I don't think that was just lucky. I think she really knew she knows what she's doing, and success has been following her, which has been great. So
Yes.
she's not successful by accident.
No.
I think
No,
she's because she's good. So yeah,
she's incredibly talented and
yeah,
she's just a
yeah,
she works her ass
yeah,
off and she's just a lovely human.
yeah. That's great. That's great. Well, do you have anything uh, that you would like to share with us? So can you, now you're going to, I definitely want to share the links of some of the voiceover stuff you've done, but, and Rex Riveter. Uh, but do you have any parting words for us?
Um, I don't think so. I really do. I know I'm no fun. I miss theater. I really,
Yeah.
really do.
Yeah.
And I'm very worried about live theater right now because I don't know how much of it is going to survive through this pandemic. So
Oh, but
if I
Rhiannon,
could,
people have been trying to kill theater for years,
that's true.
and it's
That's true.
survived.
It
And it
has
will.
survived.
It's people trying to kill it and kill it and kill it. So you're right. There's a lot of little theaters that may not make it through, and even some larger ones because of their, the way they're set up as far as like how they pay for their spaces.
Yeah.
But but hopefully those theaters will either stay. We've had some theaters come back. We've had, I
Hmm.
mean, before all of this, we had theaters that disappeared and they came back,
Yeah.
and they hang on to their name and all their licensing and so forth. So there is hope. Yeah, it's going to be hard. So I know you really miss the. When I was putting together the introduction of this, I was looking at several photos and I was like, oh man, it's made me really
Yeah.
miss theater. So
I
yeah,
do. I miss it a lot, and I've been doing audio drama, and that's fun. But I really miss the experience of live theater because it's really isn't like anything else.
yeah, yeah. That interaction, not only with the,
Hmm.
I mean, it's the whole thing to me. It's not
Hmm.
just the, it's the process and the discoveries and the
Yeah.
audience and the set coming together and the costumes being produced and the
Yeah.
other actors and connecting with them and finding out about all of that. It's the whole package. uh
Yeah.
so because I performed, as a variety performer for years, and it's not the same. I mean,
Mm-mm.
I loved it. I made a very good living doing that, but it's not the same as doing a play or a musical.
No,
It's
it
different.
really is. And the whole from start to finish. I love the rehearsal process. I do so much, and I love table work, and I love really digging my teeth into a character.
Yeah,
I was a writing major in college, so like script analysis and like really getting into the character itself, or him
yeah,
or herself, and just really figuring out everything about them is something
yeah,
I love to do.
yeah. Well, hopefully we'll get to see you on stage again soon.
It'd be
So,
nice.
yeah. Hey, this has been a blast. Thank you so much for coming on
My
and
pleasure.
talking. And I loved hearing all about your different projects, and we'll be sure and share those. So,
Yeah.
we've been talking with Rhiannon McAfee, and we're going to share some stuff with you. And if you like this, just hit that like button. And if you want to see more videos coming your way, hit the subscribe button, and then you'll get notified as to when new videos get put up and so forth. So thank you very much. This has been Stage Perspective. Bye bye.